Hey guys, this is Kevin Estella. I'm here with Austin Lester. We are the subject matter experts with Fieldcraft Survival in terms of all things survival, bushcraft, and in this case, medicine, in terms of what the hunter or the outdoorsman should have on them and be prepared for, because let's face it, accidents do happen.
Yeah, and it never is going to happen to me, but it happens to somebody else.
Yeah.
Until it happens to you.
Yeah. It's not happening to me until I admit that it's happened to me. Yeah. And, just like, your fishing story, like the fish starts off this big and it gets this big and that big, and you hold fish out so it gets like super long. Yeah. Like we all know that sportsmen, they always tell the truth.
They do. Yeah. They're never falsifying information.
Never.
But it's one of those things that I think is super underappreciated in a lot of aspects of being an outdoorsman, and growing up doing that and being in that environment. It wasn't even a thought for any of my family members or friends, of having med stuff. And until I started working for county EMS, did I really start to see the benefit of carrying it every day, and then tying that into being an outdoorsman. And then what do I actually need to carry, and what are really like common injuries for people? Yeah.
And I think when we start off and we're planning our hunting, fishing, our trapping trips, whatever it may be, we always plan for success, right? We think about, all right, I've got my cleaning kit for my fish when I catch my fish, or my kill kit when I have to, field dress a deer or whatever. But that planning for success often makes us forget about the things that could happen that we don't want to think about, but they are very realistic scenarios that happen every single year to outdoorsmen. So we've got a number of items here of things that you probably should carry, and we'll tell you, why you should carry it and back it up with some actual history here. So what do we got?
And so first off, like one of the first things that I think of as an injury that can happen is cold and heat injuries, because the first thing we're going to be doing is out in the environment, right? So we know that something super simple you can pack and carry is a survival wrap, is what it's called here. But it's just a survival blanket, something that allows me to keep all my body heat close to me. And then also it's bright in color to signify that it's been an emergency. But heat and cold can both be solved, with something like this, because when we're treating for someone that has a traumatic injury or something along those lines, you have to remember when your body loses a lot of blood, that's what keeps us at 98.6. So you can actually get what's called secondary hypothermia. And without going down the rabbit hole of what that is, essentially when you lose all that blood, your body is going to cool off, your core temperature is going to cool off. So even in a hot environment, having something like this to warm somebody up that's been injured, or yourself, is super important.
Yeah. And I think something that it needs to be said is a lot of people think that these emergency blankets, they're going to generate heat, and they don't, right? They reflect heat back. And one of the places where you're going to encounter the most heat loss is directly from the ground. So if you have a person, I'm not a medical professional, I can't say a patient, I know you definitely can, and doctors can, right? So when you've got a person on the ground, a patient on the ground, you want to make sure that they're not just laying flat on the ground, and just putting that on the ground isn't going to protect you from the conduction cooling of the ground. So that'll keep your warmth in, but it's not going to generate any warmth on its own.
Yeah, super important. So, but even heat, like I said, heat or cold, a lot of people will look at it and they think, oh, I only need that for whenever it's really cold, like here it is here in Utah, but it's definitely not the case. Even in the warm months, it's important to have as well.
Now, this one, I was telling Austin before we got on camera about an eye injury that I sustained. And we think we're all tough, right? Like you can go to the gym, you can bench a lot, you could get into a rolling match with someone and tap them out. You could think you're like the toughest guy in the world. There is so much truth to the idea that we can't grow muscles on our eyes, right? We could get jacked, but I can't build muscles on my eyes. And the minute that you injure your eye, you are 50% effective in terms of being able to see. So, for outdoorsmen, this happens all the time, right? Like you're a fisherman, you're following your buddy, right? Worst case scenario, someone is doing a back cast and you get hooked in the eye. That's never happened to me. But what has happened to me on multiple occasions is you're walking, someone pulls the branch, and you usually have to establish like you're going to call heads or something, right? And if you don't, you have the jerk friend that doesn't say anything, and they let that thing fly and it hits you right in the eye. So tell us, what is this for?
Yeah, so this is just a little eye cup. And I'll actually get this one out so you can see it a little better. super basic piece of equipment, right? Just a little piece of plastic. It's contoured to be able to fit around the eye. But what you're looking at with something like this is protecting the already injured eye. And so a few things to consider with that is always covering, one, obviously the injured eye, but two, you may even, especially with something that's maybe protruding out, you want to go ahead and cover the other eye as well. So then, because obviously there's very few of us that can move eyes individually, but whenever you move one eye, the other one moves with it. And so if you're covering them both and keeping that person from even trying to look around, it's going to prevent as much damage in that other eye. So having something like this that can cover the eye, keep it protected from anything touching it. Because what's the first thing we want to do when something gets in our eye?
Oh yeah, you want to
always touch it, you want to rub it, and you always end up making things worse when you do that. So you have to think through when that happens. And especially as an outdoorsman, if I'm going to be on a couple of days of a hunt, it starts and it hurts initially, and then maybe you think it goes away, but it'll come back. It seems like twofold later, and you can actually cause a lot of damage by doing that. So covering it and protecting it is super important. And but we'll be doing a ton of training videos on how to actually use them. And
I was telling Austin earlier, I had a corneal abrasion, and the slightest bit of pressure on that eye hurt like hell. And the way that the eye doctor described it to me, the abrasion was horizontal. So every time that I would blink my eye, it was like I had a cut on my hand and I was putting it inside of a pocket, opening up that injury. And this is actually what I had on my eye for 72 hours while my eye was healing. And I came very close to losing vision. So if I can stress one thing to you, protect your eyes. You might not look like the coolest guy in the world, cutting wood, chopping wood, splitting wood, whatever. But wear eye protection. It's gonna protect you in the long run.
Yeah, even just clear glasses when you're moving through brush could be really beneficial. But next up, I think splinting is a really important one because just like you said, you're 50% effective with one eye down. Well, you're probably even less effective if you're down a leg, or if you've rolled an ankle, broken a bone, especially a long bone fracture, something like that can really hinder you. And especially if you've moved in a great distance into an area, like if you're hunting, you got to think through that. What would happen if I'm now not as mobile as I once was? So actually being able to splint a rolled ankle, even if it's just a sprain or a twist, but having the ability to splint a fracture as well can promote your ability to actually get yourself out of there and not just being stuck in that one location. So a SAM splint is a really good option to carry. It weighs nothing. It's just a little piece of aluminum, essentially. It's about 3 feet long. It's probably about 5 inches wide. But then it's got this foam material around it, and it's super beneficial for that. And just taking this, splinting off an ankle, splinting off a wrist or a long bone, and then tying it off with just a bandana or duct tape or whatever you need to do to secure it. It's super easy to use.
Yeah, I think there have been a lot of stories of people who have fallen out of tree stands, right? Common injury. You think about it, you go up into a tree stand early in the morning, you're there before the sun rises, and you're sitting all day, you're not really moving, and next thing you know, you get up to adjust, you get up to go pursue the deer that you just shot, and now you fall out of your tree stand. So you can injure yourself that way. You can injure yourself dragging a deer, right? You can injure yourself just tripping and putting your hand down to brace yourself. I mean, we're not on like a combatives mat. You're not just going to break fall. A lot of people will put their hand down and break their wrist. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yep. It's like I said, it weighs nothing. And there's 1,000,001 survival uses for these as well. If you were in a worst case scenario, you can do a lot of really cool stuff with these.
Yeah. What was the one you were talking about at the last class we did? You can use it as a reflective device.
Yeah. So that piece of aluminum, if you tear down this foil or tear down the foam around the aluminum inside here, you can polish that up with just a little bit of dirt, and then you use that as a reflective surface as a signal mirror. So it's pretty cool. And then we'll go into boo-boo kits. So one of the other most underappreciated things is just a boo-boo kit, right? Like everybody jokes and says, "Oh, I don't need a Band-Aid. Oh, I don't need to wear gloves or any of that stuff." But when you're thinking about the longevity of how long you're going to be out, something as small as a nick on a finger can really, it'll get worse over time because you have way higher chance for infection and other bacteria to get in there and cause a lot of problems. So having like triple antibiotic ointment, some Band-Aids, and then some other just this looks like antiseptic towelettes in here, stuff like that, super big deal to carry, and as well as gloves. And when you go to treat things like that, I know I'm not the cleanest dude when I go to the woods, but wearing gloves and
only when you go to the woods?
Only when I go to the woods.
Yeah, only when you go to the woods. Not the cleanest dude in the world.
But stuff like that. And then also, and you brought up a point earlier of knowing the difference between carrying a boo-boo kit and what true trauma is, and knowing whenever obviously this isn't going to help me anymore and I need to look at bigger, better options to treat whatever the injury could be.
Yeah, I can count on this many fingers how many times I've actually needed to pull out clotting factor or a tourniquet to use on myself, but I can't count on all these fingers and toes, all 22 of them, how many times I've needed bandages or stuff like that for when I've accidentally cut myself. And I mean, I use knives every single day, and anyone that tells you that they haven't cut themselves is probably a liar. So, I mean, let's think about it. We have broadheads. Okay. And people are often too lazy to break out a broadhead wrench. So they twist it with their fingers, not realizing that it's a razor blade. So you can cut yourself like that. You can cut yourself going through briars. I mean, the list goes on. And if you're only carrying trauma gear, you're missing part of the equation that's incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. And broadheads brings up another really good one is the tourniquet. And this should be the staple of every kit that you ever carry, because this is the number one reason for loss of life is massive hemorrhage. So knowing how to use a tourniquet appropriately can't be stated enough. So carrying one, and I actually will usually carry more than one. I'll try to carry one for myself or two for myself, and then one for everybody else in the crew that I'm going to be with. But I like to have a bunch of these, but super important to have and know how to use, because massive hemorrhage is something that, and coming from the military, something that really caught me off guard when I joined and we talked about these statistics, is that somewhere in the 80 percentile range of injuries that happen on the battlefield could have been, those lives could have been saved with just a tourniquet if they had been applied correctly and in the right amount of time. Right. So to me, that's a no-brainer.
So, I mean, obviously, guys, there are so many things that you could carry. You're going to custom tailor the kit that you get, the kit that you assemble to your own needs. I mean, we didn't even talk about the medication that you might want to have handy. Yeah. Having a list of like your medical condition that you could give to all the members of your party in case you guys get injured or whatever. But you just want to use a clear mind when you're coming up with all these ideas. I know it's super exciting to want to carry all this cool stuff and get the latest gear when it comes out in the hunting catalog, but make sure your basics are covered before you start buying all the cool guy stuff.
Yeah. And a lot of people will buy kits and they're really Mickey Mouse, or somebody will sell you a kit online that has all these great things and it weighs nothing or whatever their spiel is. But
pen light.
Like a pin light. Yeah. I think I have one here somewhere.
Badass pen light.
Yeah. Like the awesome pin light that you can carry. And, but a lot of people don't even know what it's for. They end up just lighting up and doing something else with it. But I mean, this is used to check a pupillary response in a victim that has had a head injury or something along those lines. And people don't even know that, and they don't give you any training with that. And it doesn't even make sense to have unless you have the knowledge base to know how to use it. So having a kit that's bare bones, that's super small, lightweight, and this is one of our kits at Fieldcraft, and the Hunter Response Kit, the Hunter Med Kit, but it's small, it's lightweight, and it has all the essentials in it, right? Like something that's no nonsense. And we even put this one together just because of the experiences that we have here in house between Mike and Kevin, and then you and I put it together, built it out with the things that make the most sense for the outdoorsman. So just make sure whether you have our kit or anybody's kit that you would to buy or put together, that you have the essentials in there that make sense to have in there. All right, guys, so that kind of wraps up our first video. We're really excited to be doing this collaboration with the Eastmans and bringing you guys some survival preparedness knowledge for the outdoorsman. Be sure to check us out on all the social media platforms. We have Instagram, YouTube. We got a big channel on YouTube. We got Locals. Check us out for sure on Locals. This is where we do all of our kind of premiere content, where we'll do the training videos on each one of these items and some of the other items that we carry.
And let's not forget, you can also check us out in person here in Heber City. Yeah. We're going to be running classes throughout the year. So stop on by. You can learn all sorts of content on survival, mobility, health-related topics right here at the Fieldcraft Survival headquarters.
And I know the goal here is we're just trying to build, and that's why we kind of collaborated with Eastmans, and we all kind of on that same wavelength of building a community of people that are just better prepared, have more knowledge, and that way we're all an asset and not a liability.